Oh my God, it's 2021. We made
First,
it.
a professor. First thing you gotta remind me to get with Josh about is to change the profile picture for their freaking promo, man. Oh my god.
What? You look so GQ in that.
Oh, freaking ghost of fucking Christmas passes. Oh my god.
Maybe we could do a update refresher and get some new pictures up there. You know.
Yeah, I look like a fucking drunk chipmunk, man, with the fucking cheeks so freaking high. Oh my goodness.
All right. So welcome to the first No Prize podcast of 2021. I am the Professor Bud Young, and you are with Lucas Fashina at Comic Crusaders. So what's
Yeah,
going
boy.
on? How is your New Year's?
Man, my New Year's, I've been so freaking celebrating too much. I didn't realize we walked into the New Year's, man. It's just been a wild. I'm just glad we made it. Um, Congratulations to everybody that actually made it and freaking made it through. Now let's freaking keep doing things good and great in freaking 2021. Let's keep it going.
Okay.
I wonder if we can give a shout out to the It's Drunken Chat Sun crew for hanging with us and freaking donating all the money that they did to all the freaking charities, such as the Virtual Con #1, and of course to the tiny freaking lymphoma charity that we did last night. And also, let's keep it going towards the Virtual Con Part 2 that we look forward to doing this year as well. So let's freaking keep it going. Let's freaking keep the
Yeah.
comic book community go freaking going. Let's freaking keep pushing.
Yep. That's coming up in April, I believe. So just keep your eyes out on for news on that. I have some great guests and some more fun podcast chat. I imagine by April we're still going to be socially distanced from each other, but you know I'm looking forward. To middle of the year. September. The con season is going to probably be just ramping back up, and I'm going to say we're all going to be out and seeing each other again by summertime, and it's really kind of coming into this new year with a new outlook, and maybe having some positivity going on here. But well, let's talk about Spider-Man. New year, new you.
Yes, it is.
It's new costume. We'll see coming up. Looks like in March or April, we got Amazing Spider-Man number 63 with a hideous new costume. What do you think about that, Lucas?
Yeah, one of the things to Al Mega, CEO, who actually put this art together regarding the new costume that's supposed to preview in Amazing Spider-Man #61. What in the heck? Spider-Man's costume has already always been perfect. It doesn't need to be changed.
Yeah,
Why would you go with this? It's got the same capabilities, right? So why would you need to freaking change it? You can even see that it's even spinning out the web the same way. Why do you need to change it? I don't
you
get
know,
it.
what it looks like to me. If you remember the Super Adaptoid from old like Tales of Suspense and Avengers, that's what it looks like. He looks like a robot with the glowing eyes, or like Rom. You know, it's like old school robot android Spider-Man. Maybe that's what it is. We don't know, and we just know that it's a new costume, which looks like he ripped off from like Gravity from like 15 years ago.
Right,
You know,
right. I mean, I guess so. It looks like they're trying to tie more of the MCU in to it, right? Where Spider-Man had more of a continuity or had of a connection to Tony Stark. Because if
well,
you
look
look
at
at the
Stark. Yeah, Stark is right under the
Yep,
Spider-Man logo.
exactly. And that's the only thing I could think of. But they don't need to do all that. I don't care about the MCU connection to all that. Never was the thing. I mean,
Hmm.
how many years? 60 some years? I mean, has it been where he didn't need freaking Tony Stark? Where he didn't need an alcoholic freaking engineer, freaking genius to freaking be surviving and freaking capture our hearts? He didn't need all that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. You
uh,
get some a little bit of a refresher. The artist can stay interested, though. I don't know why you need incentive to stay interested to dress Spidey all day. Uh, but hey, maybe they could sell a few action figures. Uh, you know, and that's I remember that used to be. like super big back in the day. Like had to come out with all the different armors for Iron Man or all the different like created costumes for Batman and Spider Man for action figure lines, so you could sell more action figures. But I don't know if the action figure scene is that hyped up anymore for all this stuff, right?
It's not. Nobody cares about action figures anymore, right? Except for the anime crowd, right? And that's
Yeah.
because the anime crowd is into these little sexy little figures, eh, half clothed, right? You know, I mean, and I can almost see this has an anime type of feel to it,
Yeah, it's like all he's
right?
missing is like a katana, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
a
Mm-hmm.
ninja Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
But this is not the change I wanted to see. Not at all. You know.
Well, that's I think it's because of such the momentous event that happened in Spider-Man this week, and Amazing
Mhm.
Spider-Man number 55. If we want to jump right into that, I mean that was a huge like old school feel. Like you need to have some working knowledge of Spidey's history. And as much as I think Last Remains has kind of been a letdown so far story wise, and I think we've been complaining for months now about Kindred and being just kind of wandering around through the Spider Books for the last 2 years, where he's not really doing anything, nothing's really happening, and then we Last Remains starts, and we're still kind of like, oh, he's not really doing anything. He sends out Sin Eater, and now we have to kind of get used to what's going on here. But as we've talked about, I think over the last couple of months, like I think we guessed before they revealed that it was Harry that was under the mask, and so of course it is in perfect, beautiful cover by Patrick Gleason, right?
Yes.
The
This was the
unbelievable cover.
speculators cover of the week, which is amazing because the for some reason the LCSs did not order enough.
Yeah, they slept on it.
Sold out.
Slept on it.
Sold out. And it boggles my mind because for the last 2 months on Drunken Chat and here, I've been talking about, hey, this is going to be a great cover. And I was like, here's me. Oh, it's going to be oversold. It's going to be overshipped. No, there's going to be too many out there. So don't think you're going to make any money out of it. And you know what happened? Nobody ordered enough, which is amazing to me. I
Yeah.
can't believe it. Dude, I've got my 40 copies.
Jesus.
I've got my 40 copies. And it's amazing because right now it's going for $20. This is a cover that's what, 3.99
Yeah.
at cover, and it's now going for $20.
And not just for the cover. I mean, the what happens in this book is what everybody has been waiting for since issue 1. When Nick Spencer came on this book a few years ago with you were like expecting big things, or at least I was. And to have like, and one of the big things was that they were going to retcon Brand New Day, right?
Mhm.
um and bring back the marriage. And while they haven't really come out and said that yet, you know the fact that Harry knows about it, and it seems like he's
It's
going
big.
to just blow the roof off of it, right? And what happens in this book really, and while it's mostly a talking head book, right? Which Spider-Man has a penchant for being lately. There's so much exposition and so much drama between Harry, Mary Jane, and Peter that I don't think they've ever really explored, right? Because Harry and Mary Jane back in the early 70s were dating while Peter was with Gwen.
Mhm.
So, and then as soon as Gwen died, and then Norman died the next issue, and then Harry found out that his dad was the Green Goblin, and then found out that Peter was Spider-Man and became the Green Goblin himself. And what kind of gets lost in the shuffle is Mary Jane breaking up and Harry's drug abuse, and the how dramatic and how soap opera ish Peter Parker's history has always kind of been, that they've always kind of gotten away from over the last 20 years, really, where it's been more of a trade paperback, written, very decompressed storyline stuff where not a lot happens in every issue, and they don't really move from zero a whole lot. They just kind of go back and forth and end up back at the same spot, where back in the 70s, Spider-Man always kind of propelled you forward storyline wise, and you always ended up somewhere different at the end of the issue. This feels actually like they're moving forward, and and well, I guess the bad thing by moving forward is that they're also moving backward, right? you know,
Yeah.
so this to me, I loved the exchange between Mary Jane and Harry, and then between Norman and Harry, and even I think Peter kind of relegated to the background again, right? As far as storyline wise, where he's kind of not really, he's in this issue, but he doesn't really factor in more than the Harry Mary Jane stuff. And to have Harry at the end of the book or towards the end of the book start talking about the bargains Peter's made and the mistakes that he's made, in how this is all Peter's fault, and to me that is just, next issue is going to be Fallout, because this is the last part of Last Remains, right?
Exactly, right?
And it ends like, this is kind of this, like, for a last part of a story, it kind of ends like Empire Strike Back ends, right? It's kind of like, what, the whole last page is a black page as Norman throws a pumpkin bomb, explodes Mary Jane, and the
Yeah.
book ends with Peter holding Mary Jane and fade to black. So, are we supposed to believe that Mary Jane died in that moment? I don't believe that for a second. What if if that happens, they're not killing off Mary Jane, right? They can't. Can they?
Sure. Why not? Why not?
I know.
Why not?
So that's, the where we end up at the end of this issue and the suspense, and I haven't felt like this about a comic in a while. I mean, this is the biggest flame on book of the year, and we just flamed the hell out of Daredevil last time. Uh,
Yeah.
so, what do you think about this book, Lucas? Because I've kind of gushing. So.
Get Peter back with Black Cat. That's it.
Kill off
That's
Mary
it.
Jane
Right. Tell
and
Mary Jane, revive her in another universe, right? Let her live her life. Let her live her life without Peter Parker. Let her do her own thing in another universe. Then after she's done that thing, let her come back with Peter Parker and Black Cat, and then let them freaking hash that out, right? I think this is great. This is good. The only part of this that I'm kind of like wary of is you told us this is kind of like the last-ish part, but in the meantime, just 3 issues ago, you had the Morlock thing come out, right?
Moreland.
Moreland,
Yeah.
right? He was a big deal in the Spider-Man freaking universe. Like he's top of the food chain, right? He was
Hmm.
top of the food chain, and then he met up with Sin Eater, and then that whole thing was squashed. What?
Well,
Huh?
so if you were following the companion books, the Last Remains was at 55.1 or dot LR. That book explains Morlun with his with Sin Eater just pretty much takes him out and takes his powers, right? And then the Order of the Spider, or the whatever they're calling the group of Spider Friends, um, they end up fighting the Sin Eater hulked up Morlun, but then Sin Eater realizes that Kindred lied to him the entire time, and then ends up, that's the end of the fight. So yeah, it was a little strange.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, your name is Clark too?
yeah,
Okay, let me go let me go ahead
yeah.
and freaking go ahead and mind my
That's
own business.
yeah. It's yep. That's basically how it ended. So I don't know if that's going to come back in the next issue. Yeah, because I mean, Sin Eater wasn't even in this issue. There was no room for him, right? This issue was it belonged to Harry, and it was all about, um the history. It was all about history, and if you don't have like, you'll enjoy this more if you have the working history of Peter's past and Spider-Man.
Right.
And we're talking, I'm talking 50 years have passed here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to work through and a lot to kind of get to the point, because we haven't seen Harry in a Marvel comic in uh, I don't know, 20 years.
Mm.
It's been a long, long time since they kind
Oh,
of killed him
n
off.
there's that whole hubbub maybe like a year or 2 years ago with the whole red not Red Carnage, Red Goblin,
Yeah,
right?
but
So
that was little Normie. That was his son, Harry's son. So
um,
yeah.
but in the meantime, you got like Madam Web, Spider Woman, Spider
Hmm.
Gwen, Silk. I forget the name of the other girl with the black suit on. And it was kind of like, hey, while all this other stuff is going on in the rest of the MCU universe, and everybody's wondering where the heck the Spider people are, this is where they're at because they're tied up in this BS.
Hmm.
That's what it is. It's like, okay, because other than that, there's no really real reason for them to be there.
Definitely that's the I guess the turd in the punch bowl is this whole Order of the Spider. Um, if they weren't around for this storyline, I think it might have been a much stronger storyline if it just was involved with Peter. If it was Peter, Harry, Mary Jane, that's it. Um, because there's no big stakes for any of the other characters that are in this, other than to have them get taken over uh, by Kindred and been controlled. Um, other than that, they're just pawns, really. And I don't think any of them really drove the storyline forward. And I think you could have done a good job showcasing Harry more. And I think this issue was stronger because none of those other characters are in it. This is
Right.
just,
You could have
it's
just
the
had
main.
You could have just had I mean, Spider Gwen. I understand that, right? Because she's part of the whole Gwen thing and got it. Um, Apparently, the artist and everything forgot that Miles is there. He's part of the whole World of the Web. He's supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm both excited. I love what they're doing, what they're trying to do with it, and I'm disappointed at the same time, right? Because once again, I mentioned the whole thing about the bigger order Spiderweb universe, and then there's the whole Order of the Web, and I think they were going to whole switch around the hierarchy, and they just didn't do it, right? And I was like, oh man, this is gonna be interesting because you can have Miles Morales as the new Spider God, or one of these other freaking people as Spider God. Silk, no, it was a Silk. Yeah, Silk. She had the chance to be the Spider God at some point. Maybe they're going to switch this around, and they know what they did. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. They
Right.
just turned this to this whole big telenovela Spider thing. Once again, the stuff that they ended it with and the dialogue was good. It's just the potential that they had to do with this, and maybe it was because of COVID, right? Maybe that's what it was. So I'll
Oh,
give them a pass
blame
on that.
everything on COVID. Let's
Yeah,
just
I'm going to blame it
blame
on
everything.
COVID. 'Cause, ugh, ugh. So yes, it's a flame one, but it had the chance to be so much bigger, so much
Uh,
better.
well, so
So
let's call it what it is. I mean, bumpy road to get here to this point. It missteps along the way. There were plenty of books, even in the Last Remain storyline, that we clobbered, right? But to get to this point where I think that for and let's talk from like modern day Marvel 2021 Marvel. This is uh, this book is a masterpiece of storyline buildup, and as the payoff in this book, while we haven't really seen the actual payoff for the end result is going to be, um, this book really kind of paid off emotionally and storyline wise at the end. So kudos to Nick Spencer and Patrick Gleason for this. And I think I've complained as much about Nick Spencer as anybody else the last year or two, but this book really paid off, and it was, I think, well worth the wait. So There you go. There's our review of Amazing Spider-Man 55, and if you can, what is it, $25 now on
Yeah, 20
it's
to
going for
$25. Yeah, I mean, look, the folks that put this together between talking about Spencer and then the colors, I do want to give a shout out to the artists, right?
yeah.
I mean, the art in this was really freaking good, right? They really detailed. There's a lot of freaking Easter eggs in there. If we can go into the details, look at the freaking crossbones. They took their freaking time with it. I want to give them an absolute freaking shout out for this. But I feel like they wanted to do more, but maybe they were just pulled back from it. I think that's what's happened right there.
Well, I want to. I'm awaiting very impatiently issue 56 so we can see the wrap up, what happens to Mary Jane after this, whether or not Norman was actually faking his his good guy turn, um, and what happens with Harry at the end, because it's it's really, it was kind of been an emotional roller coaster for this issue anyway for me. Um, as an old school Spider-Man fan, I really loved all the old characters that they brought back, and Harry was one of my favorites from back in the day. So thank you, Nick Spencer, and let's uh, let's keep it going. Don't go backwards now,
Yeah, keep it going where there's an actual direction to a Spider-Man freaking title.
right? Let's jump into Power Pack. Let's talk about Power Pack. We haven't talked.
Yes,
I don't
man.
think we've ever talked about Power Pack on this podcast.
Power Pack, done by Ryan Worth, Nico Leon, and Rachel Rosenberg. I'm gonna
Well,
put Power Pack where it should be. Right.
let's talk about where it's operating right now in the overall outlawed storyline, right? So
Exactly.
give us a little backstory on what's up here, and then we can jump into how, why the heck Power Pack is back now.
Right. So in the Outlaw storyline, anybody under the age of, is it 18 or is it
So,
21?
21.
21 is not supposed to be doing any superheroing or saving lives without at least a mentor that signed up and decided to take responsibility for them. So it's called Kamala's Law, actually, right? Because Kamala had some going ins and everything, and a whole bunch of people freaking died. So they're like, oh, well, we can't, kids shouldn't be in freaking danger and everything. And even if it's somebody's life and on the line, you're not supposed to be doing it, which is crazy because especially they've been doing these traps, abatements, where they just set up these situations and the kids, hey, they're freaking kids, which is even crazier to me. It's like, hey, they're freaking kids. They don't have fully formed minds, yet you're trapping them so you can freaking just lock them up, right? So the next contestants up on this road is the Power Pack. They've set up the situation. Power Pack, they go out to try and save lives, and lo and behold, it's a freaking trap. So they're getting ready to freaking lock these kids up. Before this superhero, who I had never heard of before, his name was Ether, shows up. He says, "Hey, I'll freaking take responsibility for him." And I know there's a whole thing back and forth in between this organization. I forget the name of the organization. And like, oh no, we can't do that. That's not the way we do it. They say, hey, look, I'll freaking take responsibility for them. They're like, well, so they relent and say, okay, you got 24 hours to go ahead and freaking knock it out. So most of this book is Power Pack taking that 24 hours to go find a superhero to mentor them for this freaking program. And they can't find nobody because guess what? Superheroes were busy saving lives. No crap, right? They couldn't find a superhero to mentor them because the superheroes are too busy doing what they do and saving lives. Which means what? That this whole law is crap, right? Because it's impossible, right? Um, So finally they relent and they figure out that the only person or the only superhero they can actually go back to is this superhero who all of a sudden dropped out of the clouds named Ether, right? And Ether says, "Yeah, I could mentor you, but here's what I'm going to teach you, right?" And he goes and starts teaching them about nuclear power. Now, a science geek after my own heart, I was like all about it because they actually break down a freaking diagram of how it will work, how they would we use the superpowers to do this whole nuclear power thing and generate electric for freaking lower income people. And I'm like, oh wow, this is freaking. I would love for my kids to actually have this if we could read about it and they could actually learn a little bit about electrical power. Then after all that, it was like, then he says, all right, you guys don't have to give me an answer now. Go ahead home and freaking think about it. Well, spoiler, it turns out that this guy Aether, who knows all the stuff about nuclear power and electrical power, is actually a bad guy in disguise. So here's my issue with that. It is the biggest trope in the world to have the smartest guy in the room turn out to be the bad guy. That's what I don't like. The super guy who just happens to know and has the actual, right thinking is the bad guy. And it's a trope. I thought we left that behind like 10, 20 years ago. But that's where we're going on now. And I think the guy's name was the Wizard or something like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's got this freaking card that says, yeah, when I was growing up, I was a kid and I invented this and I invented that. And, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't really give a reason why he's doing that to the Power Pack, but um, whatever. So it's disappointing because I was like, okay, here's a new power. I was really looking forward to saying, hey, there's a new freaking guy out there, and this Power Pack comic, which I had never seen any real reason for them to bring him back, actually has a purpose because actually trying to teach kids something about electrical power, which would have been great. Instead, I can't do it because now it makes smart people out to be villains. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that information. So, what did you think, Professor?
Well, I'm going to probably three or four prong clobber this book, and I want to talk. I want because there's a lot to unpack and a lot of issues that I had with this book. But let's start off with the outlawed storyline. The outlawed storyline is kind of turned out to be the redheaded stepchild of 2020 as far as crossover type event books go. This book, Outlawed, came out probably a week, maybe 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, and it was supposed to relaunch. It relaunched Champions. It tied very tightly into Ms. Marvel and Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I, I guess supposed to have more stuff with it that a lot I think I'm assuming a lot fell to the wayside. It's still you're still seeing the storyline play out in Champions, which has been coming out very sporadically over the last few months, and Miles Morales pretty much hasn't really mentioned it. Um, and Ms. Marvel, who is the reason for the law, the Kamala's law, um, is not they're not really driving the storyline. This is kind of like they just threw it out there, and then they really don't know what to do with it now because of all the disruptions in COVID. This is probably a storyline that should have been wrapped up 6 months ago that we're seeing played out and nobody cares, right? So
Nobody knows why
nobody
this book still exists.
nobody knows, and so maybe Power Pack should have come out 6 months ago, right? But instead, we're getting it now, and to me, it just feels like they're just throwing it out there to publish it and get whatever they can out of it. So that was my first issue with it. Second, we've seen the story before, and not just and recently. If anybody that reads Runaways, which is a fantastic book
Mm,
that we've talked about several times, they've done this storyline already. Just a year ago, they
yes.
had the team met a mentor superhero that trained them and took them under his wing, gave them costumes, turned out to be a bad guy, right? So
Ugh.
we've seen this already, and to continue to tie in Runaways, my big issue with Power Pack, and I love Power Pack. I have the first issue. I bought it in 1985 when it came out. I loved the concept. Here's my issue: that even the writers don't know how old these characters are,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've got Katie and Jack, so Energizer and Massmaster, who haven't aged in for 30 years, 35 years, right? They haven't aged; they're the same age. Alex, so here's where they messed up, right? Alex was a part of the Future Foundation, who ended up going into limbo with Franklin and Valeria and Reed and Sue for 4 or 5 years, and so he wasn't even in the comic book for that period of time. And then when he came back, he was aged 5 or 6 years, right? So he's technically an adult, which they do talk about in this issue, where he says, I'm technically an adult, but that's not what your birth certificate says, right? Uh, so that's my issue there. So he physically looks older, but he's not. He's
Mm.
under even, and
Yeah.
they even said, well, even though you were gone that long, you still don't look like you're 21 or over, right? You still look like a kid, which is fine. My biggest issue is with Julie Lightspeed Power, who and I might sound like the old fart here, so bear with me, Lucas. So Julie is a proud member of the LGBT community, and what came out as a lesbian way back in Avengers Initiative, back in what, 10 years ago, right? So, and even then, 10 years ago, when she was part of the Avengers Initiative, they had aged her. She was an adult.
Mm.
Okay. She was an adult at that point. Even if she was still a teenager, she was 18 and 19, because they didn't want anybody younger than that, right? They didn't want to have a 15, a 14, a 13-year-old say, this is my sexual identity. Even if they probably don't have a problem with it now, they would have 10 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in Runaways last year, she shows up in Runaways as the romantic involvement with Carolina. And they were sexually active. Okay. So in all intents and purposes, I don't think Marvel wants to promote the fact that there's underage sex going on in any of their books. Okay. So you have to kind of take on faith that in Runaways, Julie Power was an adult, a consenting adult, traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast, where Runaways takes place, alone, to shack up with her girlfriend,
Who's underage?
who in a house full of
Underage.
kids,
Yeah.
right? So you have to kind of buy into the fact that Julie was a big adult that was making her own life decisions. Correct? You with
Yeah.
me?
Mm.
And in this book, Power Pack, that just comes out this week, she is living with her mom and dad
Mm.
in the house where she's the big sister. Even the artists in this book, they draw her inconsistently, where there are several panels in this book where she's flat chested, and then several panels in this book where she's developed. And so I just think that they're confused, and they're like, they don't know where Julie fits in. Alex, you can explain away because he was gone for 5 years. Jack and Katie, I mean, look at Katie, still like 5 years old. She was 5 years old in her first appearance. So where do you where do you make that connection, right? So anyway, this is the problem, and I don't think I I don't want to know. Like, I don't know if it's the writer or the artist's issue, or the fact that there was so much going on. But this book deserves to be clobbered just because they can't figure it out.
Mm.
Who's the writer? Ryan North. There should have been some kind of exposition, even if they said, she got de-aged somehow. Explain that in 2 panels for me. you know I'll be happy with that. But the fact, and they do, mention that there's dialogue in there that Julie is LGBT, and that she was saying how cute someone else was. That was their loose reference to the fact that she's gay. But I just the book is such a mess for me from that point, because you can't look and say that she's appeared in Runaways and appeared in Avengers Initiative, and where they had grown and moved that character forward, and then just totally pulled her back.
Mm,
You know, so
right.
I don't know. I'm confused. Someone explain it.
Maybe they will, but I don't think they will because this whole outlaw freaking storyline has
And
been an absolutely
we're the two people that freaking read Power Pack. So this is it. So, I'd be amazed to see, like, positive sales numbers on this, but
Oh, nobody.
yeah,
Nobody.
so
And I'll tell you why, because in Power Pack number 1, they actually had a 1 to freaking 100, right? A 1 to 100 freaking variant of the Power Pack. And you know what happened that was so big in that freaking thing? Nothing. So after that, nobody wants to freaking buy it, right? Because it's all this is. You recognize what this was. All this was another freaking grab at freaking money, and it's a
yeah,
bad freaking shot at it,
yep, yeah, and
which
I
is
I mean,
disappointing.
and I wanna say that I do kinda think that there's some kind of nostalgia, um, maybe demand, not maybe not demand, but something nostalgic about Power Pack coming back. I would love to, like, read more of them, but you know what? Age them or something, or or hey, how about this? Maybe transfer the powers to another family of little kids,
Mm,
and have
yeah,
have the Power family be maybe their mentors. You know,
yeah, that
Eh,
would make sense. That would have made sense to me.
So I don't know. Maybe later on down the road you can bring back Power Pack and make it make sense. But to me, with just operating in the environment that they kind of got stuck in, it just created more questions than it answered, and it's 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 a clobber all around for me, and many times clobbering. There's
Mm,
so much wrong with this book.
yeah.
Anyhow, let's take a very, very quick break, and we will be back in 30 seconds to talk Avengers.
Let me ask you a question. Are you wanting to read a new comic book that has nothing to do with the big two? Are you tired of looking through countless titles and have no idea where to begin? Well, don't you worry, because the random dude Josh and Johnny the Machine Hughes has the podcast for you. Flipside Focus, only on the Undercover Capes Podcast Network.
And we are back. How was your break, Lucas?
Oh man, I just got the right types of nutrients and the hydration inside me. Freaking trying to freaking recover from this absolutely beautiful New Year's. How about yourself, Professor?
It was refreshing, refreshing. Can't wait. All right, uh, let's jump into let's jump into the Avengers. And wow, I might want you to take the lead on this, so I can gather my thoughts. Um, So why don't you why don't you tell us? Because I think that we were talking earlier, and you had said mentioned something about Marvel 1000 in their relationship with this issue.
Right. So Sleep Now in the Fire. That's the title of this online story, by Jason Aaron's and Javier Garon. Colorist is by David Coriel. Letterers, VC's Corey Petit. With variant cover art is by Leno Franciu and Marte Gracia. Um, and then they also had variant cover artists Arthur Adams, Rochelle Rosenberg, Dusty Weaver, Javier Garon, Joshua Cassera, Matthew Wilson, Joshua Sway, and Suave and Torin Clark.
Wow,
And
how many covers?
that's the interesting thing. I don't remember all those doggone covers, but they listed quite a few of them.
Eh,
The one interesting thing was they did have a design type cover which had Black Panther in the form of the Phoenix. Um, the so let's pull it back for what's been happening, right? Because it's been coming from three prongs, right? Number one is that in previous Avengers, Moon Knight and had been fighting against Avengers and had been wrapping up the Avengers and stealing their powers away from them. Because he was saying that there was an existential threat that was out there, and that threat was coming soon, right? And he was doing that under the directions of Noshu. Um, but eventually the Avengers got their powers back with the help of Black Panther, who was leading the threat, and they got it back. Well, now they've got the Phoenix in the house on Earth, and it's pitting them against each other and against several villains, and a tournament style thing where they get whisked off to some other dimension, and then they're battling. The big battle is in between Captain America and Doctor Doom, and Doctor Doom, look, he's just killing, just freaking wailing on freaking Captain America. But Captain America just won't give up. So in a weird way that that whole X-Men X Swords freaking tournament when it happened, where if you win, you lose type deal. That's what happened. Captain America wins because he lost, but he didn't give up. Okay. Um, what? Well, first of all, you didn't set this whole tournament up for me in the first place. You just kind of threw this tournament on me, and now you're saying you win by you win by losing, huh? Um, and then also you got a weird panel in between Wolverine and Namor, and they're fighting it out for whatever reason, which doesn't make sense to me because once again, you've got this extraterrestrial threat. So what do you do to fight against this extraterrestrial threat? You fight against each other. Okay. And it's apparently because Namor is under the impression that the Phoenix is calling his name, and he's supposed to be with the Phoenix, whatever, but it's never fully explained. And once again, this is one of those things that just came out of like nowhere. Um, and they've got several of the heroes fighting against each other, against the residents of Atlantis, so forth and back and forth and everything. And then some of them get touched by the Phoenix and everything. It's weird. But here's the deal. Um, there is a pretty big splash page that's at the end of this, and I'm going to bring this up real quick. And I know this might be hard for you to see on my screen. If I actually mentioned, maybe we got to bring this up. Nope, still hard. um, the There's several characters in there. You got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Hmm.
You've got Howard the Duck there. You've got Valkyrie, Luke Cage. You got Man Thing. You've got Namor, Black Knight, Shang-Chi, Wolverine, She-Hulk, uh, Black Panther, Captain America. Here's the interesting thing that I saw, right? From Marvel Comics 1000, there was an old character that he was from like maybe the 90s or the 70s. I forget what he was. His name was called the Night Thrasher. The Night Thrasher is kind of important because he was part of this big three that was trying to hunt down the Eternity Mask. The Eternity Mask was this mask endowed with the powers of eternity that anytime you fought somebody, as long as you had it on, you were able to match that person punch for punch, skill for skill. It was one of those long lost freaking characters, right?
Which guy? Which guy is Night Thrasher in this double page spread here, or not
Right.
double page,
So
but
exactly. So he is hidden behind Shang-Chi and Namor.
oh, I thought that was the Electra Daredevil.
Nope. That is Night Thrasher, and I can tell because he's got the little pole. That's one of his weapons.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Daredevil, but now that I'm looking, I do see that it's more of a full masked hood. Uh, well, you know what? I think the jury's still out. I think that still might be Elektra Daredevil.
Okay. Um,
But
well,
you know,
I can see where it might look the way it's kind of weird by there. I can see maybe people think that it's got like a female type of physique or something like that, but it's Night Thrasher.
okay.
And the reason why I think it's Night Thrasher is because Marvel Comics 1000, everybody that's been in Marvel Comics 1000 has made an appearance so far this year. And it's because at some point they're trying to make some type of project out there for these people to appear in. And he was one of the very last ones that has not shown up. He was a big Al Ewing deal. Al Ewing's been saying all along, hey, I like Night Thrasher. He's underrated. I'm going to try to bring him back. He's actually done interviews where he says, hey, Night Thrasher, Night Thrasher, Night Thrasher. And this is the first time that he's actually showed up since Marvel Comics 1000, unless I'm missing some other appearances.
Probably
So yeah, so so that's why I'm saying this is most definitely Night Thrasher, even though this is a Jason Aaron book. This is most definitely Night Thrasher. And once again, I've been telling the speculation community, hey, gotta pick up Night Thrasher. If you can find a first appearance of Night Thrasher, pick him up. And finally, it came to fruition that hey, just something going to be happening with the Phoenix Force and the Avengers, and this is where it freaking starts. And of course, because he's hitting all the way in the back. And he's even given kind of a kind of feminine physique. That means that they're trying to hide something, and this is where it freaking starts.
not.
So there you go.
Interesting.
Uh, yeah, so other than my speculation, what did you think, Professor?
So I've had issues with Jason Aaron's run of Avengers since day one. Um, this really has not been an exception for me. Um, because I don't think the Avengers are the main characters in their own book, which I mean, just looking at this issue as well, I mean, to me, the signs of a weak story is when they drop you in right in the middle of it. And I think where they have to kind of move around the scenes. And the very first page is like Phoenix Cap versus Phoenix Doctor Doom, right? And so they do, like you just said, they drop you right into the middle of the action and don't really explain anything. So automatically in this issue, you're jumping from the fight to the explanation for the fight. And they did this in the last storyline with Moon Knight and Khonshu, where they were jumping around and showing how Moon Knight was beating all these different Avengers, but not really. They were like kind of then they were going back and explaining it. Here, it doesn't work. Simply just because we've seen this before already. And again, just last month, you just brought up X of Swords. We just already just had a tournament last month,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're in another tournament where, and it's another X-Men device with which is the Phoenix, where now that we're being able to use Phoenix in Avengers because of the whole A versus X from a few years ago, which they loosely uh, reference here where Captain America says the last time the Phoenix appeared caused a fight between the Avengers and the X-Men, but they weren't fighting over the Phoenix Force. They were fighting against the Phoenix Force, right? Because
Yeah.
the X-Men, they had like the five, they had Cyclops and White Queen and Namor. Namor had the Phoenix Force in A versus X. And the Avengers were fighting against that. They weren't fighting for the Phoenix, which is here where it looks like Contest of Champions,
Yeah.
where they just and Secret Wars, right? Because Phoenix pulls the people that she want, all the Phoenix Force wants, and pulls them into her so that they can fight for who has the right to wield her power. And that to me, it goes against I think everything that we've seen the Phoenix do before, where even with Phoenix's first appearance, where she's with Jean Grey, and then they kind of spend years and years trying to just kind of explain how powerful Phoenix is, right? And then she's just this force for the next several decades. And now, like with A versus X, they were still like they were splitting the Phoenix Force between the five of them in A versus X, so they weren't as powerful as they would have been singularly.
Yeah.
And here, um, I don't know why. First of all, I don't know why the Phoenix keeps looking for a host on Earth. She's a cosmic entity, right? So why is she always looking for
A human host.
looking for love here on Earth? Um, and the fact that she's looking for someone that's not like a mutant, right? That's the one thing that's kind of bugging me now, is that historically the Phoenix Force has been attached to a mutant. And now we get a first round of Captain America versus Doctor Doom, and I totally agree with you about being like Doctor Doom realizes that the Phoenix is actually looking for a spirit, right? Which is why Captain America won, because he had that no quit mentality. So Doctor Doom quits,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Your mother's name is Martha too? I guess I'll quit. Hey, oh, come on.
so
Come on.
and then I'm sitting there going, okay, so the Phoenix, and then the Phoenix takes all these characters, um, Namor, Black Knight for some reason, Shang-Chi, and I think on the corner that's American Eagle on that last page that you were pulled before, Hyperion and Nighthawk, that's Nighthawk at the top, who we haven't seen in years. Shanna the She-Devil's there with Zabu, but where's Kazar? I'm like, I don't know why they're picking who they're picking, but then, like, if you look at who the Phoenix left behind, why the hell would the Phoenix leave Thor behind? Why, and then I'm sitting there going, this is supposed to be the Avengers, and and Wolverine has more of a part in this book, even though I bet you yeah, Wolverine was an Avenger before. He's not an Avenger anymore, and he's not part of this team. Um, but you have Black Panther, Cap, and She-Hulk are the only three current active Avengers that are in this last that are going to be involved in the storyline. So what happens to the rest of them? And to me, this has been a problem that has plagued Jason Aaron's run since the beginning, and I've been harping on it for years now. Is that the Avengers are second-class citizens in their own book? There are some issues. The last issue of Avengers, you're lucky that it came out on a week we didn't podcast, was a total issue about the million-year BC Avengers and it was the Phoenix. Entirely, they didn't even appear in the Avengers didn't appear in the book, and it was you're lucky. I was so angry, but this book is real. It should be just called the Marvel Universe, right? Because everybody's in here but the Avengers,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like I said, they're not the main characters in their own book. There's no drama. I would contest for any Avengers fan to actually name what the roster is. You don't even get, like, at least in the X-Men books, you get pictures of who appears in the X-Men book that month because they can keep track. Here, I mean, I don't. They spent a whole ton of time developing the Ghost Rider Robbie Reyes as a character, but we haven't seen Robbie for months in this book. We haven't seen
Nobody cares.
right,
There's
right.
too many Ghost Riders out there now, right? There was another book
Right.
for Ghost Rider came out this week called what? Ghost Rider Vengeance,
Yeah,
and that was terrible.
yeah.
Freaking
Well,
terrible.
because nobody remembers the character. That's why. It was a early '90s. There's 97 books a month coming out of there, and speculators.
Oh my
Uh,
god! It's like, okay. First,
it's
here's the issue with
Go ahead.
Marvel right now. They started out real good, right? COVID actually made them make sense, right? They cut down a whole bunch of their books, and the books that they put out, I was loving.
Mhm.
I was like, oh wow, they actually cut down the books and they made put out. Now they're back to the same old BS, putting out books that nobody asked for, and now they've got storylines out there that nobody asked for that don't make any freaking sense.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
This
yeah,
Power Pack and God forbid it's now Avengers and that other Ghost Rider Vengeance and everything. Like, oh jeez.
now and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if you know this, but I think that this is Jason Aaron's last Avengers storyline,
Thank
and
God.
then he's leaving the book, right?
Thank God. Thank
But
God.
well, but it, then you realize, so let's say this is his last storyline. He wraps up nothing that he set up, right? I mean, he set up the Squadron Supreme, which we get a couple of the members here. He set up Namor as kind of pivoting back into a villainous role. There was a ton of stuff that he was setting up that there's just no payoff for, or we might have to look for payoff in other books down the line, or we get the payoff from another writer who is going to come in and maybe wrap up some stuff, you know. So that to me, it's kind of this book for the last 50 issues or whatever issue we're on here, it's just been so much of just throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks, and
Bad.
and then getting away from it and not going back and explaining anything. You know, it's just on to the next big thing. They did that whole thing with the Star brand, and you
Exactly.
know
Where's the
what?
baby at?
Yeah, what?
Where's the
Well,
baby at?
the bit with Tony Stark, right? With Iron Man and Captain Marvel, who haven't been in the book in a couple of months, right? So there's no
That's
follow up
bad,
to it.
right? Because Tony Stark is off with freaking Kitty Cat. I forget what her name is.
Hellcat, yeah,
Hellcat. Right now.
in his own book. But so this is I've long ago this what happens in Avengers, it happens in a vacuum. You can't bring in anything. It took them years to update Thor's costume. Captain America was wanted for murder, but he's been in here for this whole time. It is kind of happening in its own universe. But this book really it makes no sense, and it just doesn't finish whatever it starts. My personal issue with is that Phoenix belongs in X-Men. Phoenix does not belong here in Avengers,
Mm.
and that's the biggest major problem I have with the story. Other than the fact that the Avengers really aren't in it, even though we get Captain America versus Doctor Doom, which any other time would have been great, except it was like it was fake Phoenix Force powered, both of them, and I don't know. It's I don't want to clobber it.
I will. I'm covering the
It's
fuck out of it. Excuse my language.
I'm just gonna
Um,
say it is a bit of a stretch simply because of all of the issues that I'm talking about. It's hard to believe about
well,
what's
well,
going on.
you know what the hardest part for me to believe was is that now the agents of Wakanda, or at least the government of Wakanda, is now standing in as Shield now.
And what happened to the Agents of Wakanda book? Because that was tightly tied into the Avengers, right? That was like the Avengers second string. You even see a couple of them on the bridge in this episode where you have Okoye and I think we saw Gorilla Man or something. But uh, where are they? That book just got canceled right out from under them, right? Did it ever end? I don't know if it ever ended. So anyhow. And that was another thing because they were showing those characters. They put the whole team together in the pages of Avengers at the expense of the other Avengers appearing in the book, and then spun them off into Agents of Wakanda.
Professor.
I could go all day.
No. So for every, you know what it ilks me right now is that everybody keeps saying, and I've seen a lot of articles that talk about, no, the DCU would never be the MCU, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem with that: is that outside of the MCU, when it comes to the comics, there is no big connection from the MCU to the comics, right?
Right.
So, for instance, right after the first Black Panther, which had the most successful weekends ever, right? And it's still like in the top 3 or something like that, right? And then after that, they decided, okay, well, now that we've proven that Black Panther and Wakanda can can be successful and people can dig it and understand it. Let's go ahead and launch more freaking related titles, right? So, they had the Black Panther title, which for some reason he went out in freaking space, whatever. Then they did the whole Shuri thing, right? It was fine, and then she went off to New York for some freaking reason. And then Black Panther came back, and where did he go? He went to America to head the Avengers for some freaking reason. And then who was left to freaking to guard Wakanda, the Agents of Wakanda, who went everywhere in the world except for Wakanda. Um,
So yeah, we could unpack this book and complain about it all day, just because I think it's not it's the amount of ideas and lack of follow through. I mean, the Avengers are based in a celestial husk that I thought it was like a dead celestial, and they plug in to his brain in this issue and have him talk to the Phoenix, and I'm just like, wait a second, I thought they were living inside a dead celestial. How can they access his brain? And then I'm like, well, maybe he's not dead. And then I'm like, so the Celestials who are responsible for passing judgment on whether or not the humanity can live, and not just here, but in the entire universe, is allowing them to live inside him. That's creepy. So I'm just like, all right. But that I honestly, that's something that they're never gonna explain. So,
right.
whatever. So anyhow, okay, I'm done ranting on this book. It's obviously the beginning of a storyline, so if they can last the next 5 issues and actually make it a readable story more than the first issue where you kind of just dropped in. But I'm assuming that next issue will get 2 more people fighting at the beginning of the issue, and then they'll have to go back and explain it again. So,
Right.
but we'll see. All right,
I don't know.
so
I mean, one last thing is that
sure.
just remember that all of the characters on that last page, the last splash page, they're supposed to have some type of project related to them.
Now, okay, so who's the one in the left? That's American Eagle, correct?
Yes.
And then,
Who the heck that big eye is? That's beyond me. That's old school
yeah,
character that
that's the orb, right?
orb. Okay.
The orb, but as far as I remember, didn't the Watcher come back to life a couple of months ago and took his eye back, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know if that's just a depowered orb, because back in Original Sin, right, that was the orb stole the Watcher's eye, and that's how they powered him up, right? Because he was an old crappy Ghost Rider villain up until then, and then they kind of powered him up by giving him like the Watcher's eyeball, and that's, I think, has been retconned already because the Watcher's back, and I think the Watcher took his eye back. So I don't know what
Yeah.
this guy's doing here. Um, but yeah, Wolverine, Shang-Chi, Luke Cage, Sif. This is like the book of this is like the splash page of people that had their books canceled this year. Moon Girl,
Oh.
Sif, Valkyrie, right? Valkyrie, not Sif. Yeah. So there you go. How
Yeah,
and then
Black Panther, She-Hulk, Wolverine. He still got Shang-Chi. Should have had his canceled. Uh,
yeah,
Moon Girl. She had hers canceled.
yeah.
Valkyrie, for some reason, I'm not sure, but she should have had her canceled.
Squadron Supreme was supposed to have a limited series come out during Empire, and that got canceled. So
Oh man,
it,
other
what do you do?
things that could have been. Oh man.
All right, that's going to do it for the first 2021 episode of No Prize Podcast. Be back here for episode 2, and we will be talking about the first episode of WandaVision. Finally, after all this time, we're still going to start getting new MCU content, so we're going to touch on that, I'm sure, and we will also be with our first batch of 2021 books. And so happy New Year to all, and we will see you soon.
Joder, el Darwin